Thank you, Yuki. Thank you, ANEMONE Global, for the kind invitation to this event. Great honor to be here and to speak to you. So I couldn't have asked for any better sort of layup for my talk than the two previous talks. So really, I want to thank Toshifumi for stressing the need for dialogue and the importance of standards. And then Takeshi, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch his student's name, but we're pointing out the need for sound foundation of the underlying principles and the methods in order to make the data comparable and reasonable for use in the information value chain. So I want to make a few things clear to begin with. I'm someone who has been working quite a long time on improving national biomonitoring, mainly in the aquatic realm, but also then regional monitoring with respect to implementing frameworks, legislative frameworks from the EU in national monitoring. So how to bring a regional legislation into national monitoring. And when I'm talking about standards, I'm not dismissive of what Toshifumi was talking about national standards and these guidelines or SOPs, but I'm talking about another level. It's a bit like data levels. There's levels to standards as well. So I'm talking about the Euro standards, which are guidelines or that are not quite the same thing. Standardization for me is also not directly equivalent with harmonization or intercalibration. It can mean the same thing, but I'm more in the context of eDNA, I'm talking more about preemptive standardization so that we don't need to harmonize. And for me, a standard is a document that has been established by international consensus and has been approved by a standardizing body that provides rules, guidelines, or characteristics for activities or their results and aimed at the promotion of optimum community benefits. So my aim is not to standardize research. So now if any researcher here in the room feels this is far too restrictive for what they want to do with exploring, I don't know, whatever particular research topic they're interested in. I'm not talking about those things. And I'm not saying not at all, but those are not so interesting for me. I'm talking about standards for things that are used later on for decision-making on national or international level. So that are in national environmental monitoring programs or are feeding into international decision-making. These are the things that I'm talking about and where I see the explicit need for these standards. Having said that, you might wonder why I'm also mentioning ISO in this respect. But there are definite reasons why that is, because in ISO, in the working groups that are formed around the topic, members represent nations. That means that by definition, whatever decisions are taken are international or global to begin with. And consensus is what we are trying to do. So they have ready pipelines for that, and you need consensus from at least 5 countries to either try to form a standard or to revise a standard. Standards have benefits in that they are permanent. They are stable documents that have revision nonetheless. So, and this is a cycle that is implemented in the way that ISO works. So when a standard is devised, every 5 years it is revisited and it is asked, is this still good? Is it okay to continue with this document or do we need to change something? And then it is voted upon. If someone says we need to change, say, the volume of the sampling, how much volume we sample, we need to change that. And you can say, China could say, well, we need to change that. And then you need a few other countries to agree with you. Yes, indeed, this is something that is really troublesome. We need to do that, and then it will be changed. It comes under voting after that, and it will be approved, and the documents live. So it's a living document. It's not something that is set in stone. A really common misconception that standards do not change. They change if necessary. It is transparent, it's reliable, and industry knows standards. So if you ask anyone, data or electronic industries, all of them know ISO standards, so that they know how to deal with them, they now know what to do with them, there are certification schemes for them, accreditation even. Laboratories all work with ISO standards. So your phosphorus analysis or so is based on ISO standards. That is how the world works. And we're happy to have standards. They have been using these techniques for 100 years, so it works really well. And for eDNA, we have the dedicated the committees that can actually do this sort of type of work. So this is why ISO is my preferred choice to do the standardization. So ideally, if we would live in an ideal world, the ideal world would look like this, and this was a nice illustration by a fairly new paper by Lopez that came out, but where you have a technology like eDNA, which you then just standardize and take care about the accessibility and data sovereignty, open access things, and then somehow automatically it becomes policy. Well, reality is a little more complex than that. So it is a really nice figure, though. I have to give Lopez that. But we start with challenges of problems. So we have what I call the problem space, and one of them is that we have the triple environment crisis. So we have pollution, we have climate change, and biodiversity loss. And we need more data to assess what we should be doing about that. That is something that is a dire need that we have. We have problems with money. So I don't know, in Japan, from my visit here, I have the perception that you're not so troubled with money than we are, but it may be that sometime it becomes limiting for you as well, funding less abundant. And then you have to think about things and how to do them in more detail. And then we have a problem with taxonomists because they are getting old and retire. So this is a real problem. It's not just a European problem. This is a worldwide problem that the people that are really taxonomists and are really good at taxonomy, they're putting in their time card and clocking out. And there are not many young people that want to do this job anymore. So then we have a solution, a policy that we would want to have, and a solution here is eDNA. Then there is the politics space. And the solution space, we're coming back to that. The solution space is something that works, again, differently from the problem space. So the problem space may be industries, it may be something related to local governments or regional authorities that have to do with the challenges and the problems with the money and so on. And then in comes the solution space, which is research. And basically, many of you probably belong to the solution space more than to the problem space. And then in comes the third stream, which is the politics. It can be national, it can be regional, it can be international. And all of those need to be considered. And if the policy goal is to implement eDNA and have it improved or approved in official Japanese, European, or global monitoring, it's not really important which of these goals it is at the end. This is how it looks. You have the problem stream there that is concerned just with the actual monitoring and all of that. You have the solution stream that is producing these, and the politics streams, which all are separate bubbles. They are not necessarily talking to each other at all. So then we have some projects that are at the interface or in the space between them. in Europe, I'm involved in two of them. eDNA plan, which is would be relevant, I think, to Takeshi, and has some relevance also for MIWA. Anemone is your really great project, and then we have the Anaqua image, another European project that I'm working on. Those are trying to make the gap smaller between the problems and the policy stream. But then we have ISDEF, which unfortunately I thought that Merat would be talking a little more on ISDEF itself, and I don't have too many slides or none on ISDEF, but I will, if time permits, shortly go into ISDEF. It is a task force designed where individual researchers can join in order to form seed documents for international standards. And I propose that standards actually are a merger of the problem stream with the solution stream. These documents in themselves already are the merger of two streams, because they have been agreed in consensus internationally that this is the solution that we want to pitch. Well, now, then there is still one stream that we need to somehow involve in that, and that is the politics stream. And that is where transcoding comes in, which means a sort of a translation between the problem and policy stream, or the standards and the politics, and make them see the light, so to speak, that this is the way that it should be. And oftentimes I feel that they are quite often open to embracing standards for the above reasons, so that they are transparent and they are well known and so on. But it is not easy. And then in the end, if all goes well, you really have achieved the policy goal, that this becomes then a reality. And this is just where it comes from, all the illustrations here. So a bit about the politics stream. And I will use a current example, or a recent example that I was part of. UNEP was drafting the Global Environmental Data Strategy, an effort where there was an outline on how data should be organized so that it could be globally used. Much what Takeshi was aiming for. Similarly, they were thinking about even more, let's put it, more wildly organized data, and how to make it such that you could use it and really use it in the weather, in the situation room, the World Environmental Situation Room. So how UNEP could use that, and there, in the draft document, which I was part of drafting, there was I got sneaked in the mention of ISO standardization and the idea of having standards for the methods, because these are the foundation that all the rest is building upon, like you showed well in your presentations, that there is a foundation level in the data, which is then has higher levels, but at the very core is how the data was sampled, and then the metadata on top of that. And the standards that we are trying to do in ISO TC 147 is starting with the sampling and how that goes through the entire chain. So, problem is when this draft, which was 150 pages long, got through the review, it turned into a 30-page document, and none of that was mentioned anymore. So it was dropped, or it is there, but you really have to look with a looking glass in order to find some of it. There are remnants of it still there. And it was not taken up by the UNEA General Assembly, so it was just an informative document, which is a shame, because it would have been really important to get there and to make it clear. Which is strengthening the point that we really need to strengthen the visibility of the need for these international standards, not just in the UN context, but in international context largely. So then, Toshifumi was telling about international coordination and of efforts for standardization, and why do we need that, and also why do we need national coordination. This is really important because of many things, but one of those that several laws require us to report on this data, on biodiversity data, and we really need the sort of reliable tools to assess that effect of the management actions that we are taking, which are the most costly ones. So monitoring is one thing, but then if you really go and restore something, you want to know how well you did. This is really important information. We have rather little information on the effectiveness of restoration measures overall in the world. It's not really well known. But we have now tools, molecular tools, that have reached a maturity that could be used worldwide and could be compared worldwide in assessments of this sort at a really large scale. But the problem is, and I'm seeing this all over again in this crowd as well, there's a fragmentation of efforts. I mean, great talks about people doing work in the Philippines and in Malaysia, and I'm not dismissive at all of those. This is really great, but these are not concerted. They are not trying for a specific aim. ANEMONE Global may change that, so you have a common aim of where you're going with it, but there is a distinct risk of duplication of efforts. And there is a distinct, as Toshifumi said, there is a risk of having multiple methods. And once that is the case, it becomes really difficult. Then the cat is out of the box. So then really there is a real big problem. Because method pluralism will lead to trench warfare. You have your method in Japan, we have ours in Finland, and then we come to a table and try to agree on harmonized methods. Well, you won't budge because you have your data systems aligned to whatever, and I have mine. So then we agree on something that is not really an agreement, and it's not really comparable in the end. Takeshi will know about that this data then is probably not really, you cannot put it in the same thing or in really high categories. It's not as informative as it needs. But the desired endpoints that we are all gunning for, biodiversity endpoints, they are much often, they're not just national or regional, but they're much higher level, transboundary, regional, global even. So I feel that we perhaps should be talking more to each other in order to do that, and that requires coordination. In Finland, on a national level, we did this a few years back by drawing out an eDNA roadmap on how to get eDNA into monitoring, and it has links to our national monitoring strategy, which I was leading the revision of. But also we describe how well we are implementing molecular methods, or we described at that point in time how well these methods were used, and not really a lot of it were used yet. And identified some of the possibilities and challenges going forward, and formulated aims on how to do that, and provided an action plan for the next few years. And this is the action plan. Oh, sorry, we promoted in that strategy the cross-organizational interaction, so discussions with multiple stakeholders from other institutes, from other government agencies. We have a small country, it's an easy thing to do, but nonetheless, it required some coordination there as well. And then we distinctly realized very early on that we really need to be talking not just amongst each other in Finland, but on an international level as well. And this is what it looks like. So 2022, and then the different steps in between going to 2027, which is for us a very important year also for the Water Framework Directive. And by 2027, so by next year, we want to have something that is very close to a framework for combining molecular data, remote sensing, and transport modeling, and so on, and use that, and also have those methods in support for EU directive monitoring, which is for us an important thing because it's nationally important monitoring. And one of the important steps was to establish this working group under ISO TC 147, which is for water quality, and the working group 13, which is on on eDNA, DNA, and RNA methods. And we set a target, which was in ISTEF actually, where we set the target for the, I think, for the first 6 items on this list. And everything now in light green color is now already entering ISO standardization. In just 2 years, we were able to do this on the international level. So this is from the sampling, capture, and preservation of environmental DNA from water, which was already a European standard. We now push it to the ISO level. We have a document which is really, really fresh and will be coming under voting and commenting for field and lab procedures for aquatic macroinvertebrate sample preservation. This is international level now. We're talking really global. And these documents were first drafted in ISTEF, which I really would have wanted to talk a little about, but we have very little time. I'm seeing I'm almost running out. So I'm just saying that it is doable if you do it correctly and you have the correct people to do it. And this is a volunteer effort, so it's not been paid specifically for. We've, of course, leveraged project funding to do something on that. So lower left-hand side, there is the information value chain from monitoring to data to information assessments and then knowledge, which is the typical way of sort of how this goes. If you have a national monitoring that you then create data and then you have your indices and then you have your assessments and then hopefully someone gets wiser by doing these assessments and have some policy decisions. Hopefully even they have a feedback loop. Here it's no feedback loop back to the monitoring, but there should be a feedback loop from the knowledge to monitoring on how to improve that, or then to the other stages, data or so on. But this is the basic foundation. And if, this is the upper hand diagram, if there's a break in the chain somewhere along those, then you can see what happens with the chain. It just falls down. It's not really valuable. So any break there is a real problem. So not enough quality data leads to error propagation. Again, we come back to what Takeshi and his student were showing us. And it leads to garbage in, garbage out. And our solution here is eDNA. And I'm not saying eDNA like eDNA just in water, but I'm saying all molecular methods that can be applied, bulk meter barcoding, also bulk sample meter barcoding included. Future methods of, I don't know what, there's many that we can use, but we need international roadmaps. And we have now a possibility to draft these. But it really requires a lot of dialogue, and we need to have that dialogue. We need the consensus about the minimum requirements, because this will be, this is the testing zone. If we can agree on the minimum requirements, then if people outperform in the national monitoring or whatever monitoring, it doesn't matter, but we can still use and compare the data later on. So this is important, forging the minimum requirements. And for that, we need international standards, because this will help us also get industry involved and use the methods largely. So this is why standardization methods matters, and methods of standardized methods matter, because we will have better in situ data that we can scale up and then have more information at valuable or at the really important scales. And we can actually have some measure of effectiveness of the policy and the measures that we take in order to make nature-positive decisions or other decisions. So, and I think with that, I'm almost at my end. Just want to make this. All the researchers, please, if you have a sabbatical, stop writing papers, start writing standards. Because really, who needs another paper on a detail? We need really, what we really direly need now, and this is no joke, we really need those standards soon. Because if we don't get our bearings right on the minimum criteria, we will end up in a quagmire where we will have so conflicting methods and so many disputes that the politicians will say we cannot trust any of those data because they're not agreeing amongst themselves. And the officials amongst you, if there are any, demand standards. Ask for them. Say, is there a standard, and why is there none? Make this a requirement. It is really important. And then if you want to get involved, and this is the wrong address, ISTEF should be with an HTTPS and then the slash, so it's not www, but HTTPS and then istef.global. You can get more information on if you want to be drafting these documents on how to do that and getting involved. So I'm openly inviting everyone that is interested in forging our future to do so. Thank you.